Hello, I'm Christian, and welcome to the Jamoir International Podcast, where we talk about effective collaboration, influence, and leadership in an increasingly complex world. My interview partner is Dr. Dirk Schlimm. Dirk is an international leadership expert and the author of Influencing Powerful People. The purpose of this podcast is to share ideas and stimulate discussion, and it does not constitute professional advice of any kind. If such advice is needed, the services of a competent professional should be sought. The speakers, host, and Jamoir International Incorporated are not to be held responsible for any use, misuse, or reuse of the content. Enjoy the show. Welcome to another summer edition of the Jamoir International Podcast. Today, we are looking at a high-profile lawsuit that is currently being fought between Elon Musk and Twitter. And when I say high profile, I am hardly exaggerating. According to The Economist, Elon Musk's proposed acquisition of Twitter was to be one of the biggest buyouts in corporate history, worth $44 billion. But now, it threatens to become one of the ugliest disputes in corporate history. Dirk, what's going on here?
Yes, Christian, Elon Musk, he is widely known as the CEO of the electric car company Tesla and the space exploration company SpaceX. And he's also one of the richest man actually in the world at this moment. And he had agreed to buy Twitter back in April of this year, but he has since pulled out. And while Twitter wants to hold him to the deal, he says that Twitter had more spam accounts than it had represented and that he's therefore pulling out for good reason. And Twitter and Elon Musk have then sued and countersued each other, and this promises to become a court battle of truly epic proportions.
Okay, Dirk, thanks for that brief explainer. And I'm sure listening right now, all the lawyers and law students are paying close attention. But why is this of interest for our listeners? Why do we want to talk about this?
Yes, first of all, you're right. It's probably an interesting case study for anyone who wants to learn about mergers and acquisitions from a legal perspective, but also from a business perspective. But I want to look at this under yet a different aspect. And as you can imagine, a court case like this is closely followed and it's under the microscope, so to speak. And one person that has some additional attention on her work right now is the judge in the case. And that's a Delaware Chief Judge, or Chancellor as she's referred to, Kathleen McCormick. And from what we've seen thus far, she seems to be quite the formidable jurist.
Okay, that's quite the introduction. How is that?
Well, lawsuits are not just one or two court sessions, as you might see on TV. So a case like this goes on for some time. And in addition to the main decision, excuse me, on the case, or what the lawyers would call the merits, there are a lot of procedural issues that are fought over hard because they set the stage for the main court battle, so to speak. And actually talked to a lawyer friend last night about this, and he mentioned that in his work, clients totally underestimate the importance of procedure. And so you need to be somebody who understands the law, but you also need a very smart operator in the court process to work a case like this. And so the rules of process matter a lot in those cases. And there will be a barrage of motions and counter motions, so filing of legal arguments that relate to procedures just to get the case into position.
Okay, Dirk, that we got a good explanation there, but a little bit of legal jargon, I could say. So essentially what I'm hearing is there's a lot of legal skirmishes for position and trying to get the higher ground before the main battle begins, so to speak.
Yeah, so exactly, that's right. And some of those skirmishes have already happened. And in these skirmishes, Judge McCormick has shown that she's not afraid to make decisions, which is by no means, again, something that you can expect in every court case. It's sometimes the judges drag things out or allow the parties to drag things out. But Judge McCormick, in fact, has made a first ruling on the speed of the trial, something that can be quite important. And she did so after holding hearings remotely. Against the judicial system can sometimes be a bit archaic, but she held a remote hearing because she had tested positive for COVID-19, but that did not deter her to hold the hearing.
Wow.
And so it seems to be no dragging things out with Judge McCormick.
Wow. Yeah, I could say she's certainly sounding firm and decisive and relentless almost. So what else do we know about Judge McCormick then?
Yeah, the Wall Street Journal spoke to some legal experts who have dealt with her, and they're saying the following about her. They're saying that Judge McCormick has a reputation for strong preparation, an ability to dissect complex corporate contracts, and a willingness to work around the clock when it is needed. And when I read that, I thought, wow, what a powerful description of a person who has what it takes to deal with an issue like this. And it's a description that should cause all of us to reflect.
Yeah, Dirk, certainly sounds like that. So let's dig in a bit. Let's get practical and unpack everything you just described. And I think we need to start at the beginning and first talk about preparation. Why is that so important?
Yeah, I think we can all relate to that in the sense that any business meeting is a bit like can be seen as a bit like a court hearing, in the sense that if there are no proper briefing materials, or the people who show up have not read the briefing materials, we're all really wasting a lot of time. And it's also very hard to decide something if you're hearing it for the first time without any opportunity for initial independent thought or having some early conclusions. And if you think about a topic by yourself a little bit first, you're going to be so much more effective in the meeting. You can more effectively listen. You can more effectively evaluate arguments. You can more effectively ask questions, and then you form a better second opinion. So please, if you're listening to this, have that discipline. Put together the briefing materials, and please, everyone, read the briefing materials ahead of time.
Dirk, I think everyone listening would be nodding along and saying that, of course, makes sense. That helps with preparation, and that leads to perhaps greater productivity and effectiveness. But I think a lot of people might hear everything you just said and the amount of work that goes into that, and might be asking, what if I'm just too busy for all that you just described?
Yeah, and I would say then you're really too busy for the meeting. You're just not able to have the meeting, and you need to check your priorities. You may have to delegate or just do something, but please don't do meetings poorly. And trust me, Judge McCormick is 100% not too busy for the Elon Musk Twitter lawsuit.
Right. That might be hard to hear, but Dirk, I think you're speaking the truth right there. Too busy to prepare, then you're too busy for the meeting. Okay, but let's turn to that second point you initially brought up. You mentioned dissecting complex corporate contracts. What's going on with that?
Yeah, you can imagine that for a big deal like this, a $44 billion deal, that there are a lot of complicated documents with a lot of legal jargon, legal provisions, schedules, attachments, and other technicalities. And this is why when the lawyers start to draw diagrams to map out relationships, what entity relates to whom, who's owning that, who's selling what to whom, and so that's what they start doing when they dissect those contracts.
Right, I hear you, Dirk. So what can we learn from that?
Yeah. In fact, it is the world is at large is getting more complex, and business is getting more complex as a whole. So it's more often that we are confronted with complexity. There's just more moving pieces, more players, more goals, more interests, more technology, and so forth. And this is not just the consumers or other businesses that your company deals with. This could also be government regulators or certain interest groups, or often sometimes departments within a company that can be a bit at cross purposes. And so the ability to dissect what's going on, explaining the players, explaining the interests, explaining the business structure, the strategy, or the plan, that's hugely important. And as a manager or professional, you can make a huge difference by bringing people who are not familiar with what's going on into the conversation, bring them properly into the conversation, and bring clarity as to what's going on. And that clarity can be very, very powerful.
Thanks, Dirk. And I'm glad it seems like we're collecting some keywords here that people can take home with them right now. We have first preparation. Now we just got to the importance of clarity, and we got that. What would be a third point we can take away here?
Now, the third point about Judge McCormick is her willingness to work around the clock when it's needed.
Right. So why is that so important? Just thinking about that, working around the clock, that sounds terrible. I'll be frank, for that whole work-life balance that everyone is all about.
Yeah, and Christian, so as we have said, this kind of lawsuit is hugely complex, and it's always possible to look at one more argument or to go down another rabbit hole. It's very easy to get extracted, and then when you're distracted, you have to think yourself again into what can be a very complex argument, even with all the clarity you're trying to bring. And so setting time aside and getting it done, even over the weekend, that's what may be needed. And that doesn't mean you work every weekend or you work around the clock all the time. It just means that you do it when it's really required, or more generally, sometimes you just clear the decks and you set the time aside to finish something so that you're not drowning in unfinished business.
Dirk, that makes a lot of sense. That's very helpful. And just reflecting on my own experience there in my academic career, when I write articles for publication or perhaps in putting together papers for conferences or seminars, I find that sitting down and writing the whole thing from start all the way to finish is the best way for me to go about it. Gathering the information and the research can take some time depending on the sources, but the actual writing, actually getting my thoughts down, I tried to do that in one session, and then I can polish it after, getting the structure and my train of thought from start to finish. And while I grant that only works with articles and smaller papers at this point, that's the way I find to get it done and to get it done well. What do you think of that?
Yeah, so Christian, I think that's exactly right, because sometimes you need to even write down the whole thing down from start to finish to end up with the clarity of thought that you need. You think you have it clear in your mind, but when you start writing it down, you realize you really don't. And writing things down reveals gaps in your thinking. And so it makes sense to do that when you're not writing a court decision, or in your case, an article, but this could be a strategy paper, or this could be a business plan, or a script for a customer pitch, or even a playbook for a negotiation. So these things, preparation, clarity, and focus on putting things together in one work session, they're really connected.
Thanks, Dirk. That's a helpful way to just bring that all together. And I'm sure thinking about where we started this, as we see how this court battle unfolds over the coming weeks and months, in addition to the main opponents, which Elon Musk and Twitter, we could see how an additional player, the judge, Chancellor McCormick, manages the case and makes decisions, and how she works more broadly. Certainly a character to be watching in this unfolding drama that has captured a lot of attention. And right now, thinking about our conversation about this, I think this is the perfect moment to just pause and evaluate what we discussed, Dirk. So just consulting my notes here, things for us to reflect on and take away. Do we come prepared as a first point, or at least prepared when we must be prepared, whether it's for that meeting, that discussion? The second point is, do we spend the mental energy to bring clarity to complexity so that we can explain or structure things properly? Third, and that final point, do we, when the time has come, hunker down and get the work done until it's done? Those are the three critical questions, I believe, that should help us evaluate whether we have what it takes or where we can make improvement to get more effective. Dirk, what do you think about all that?
So Christian, as always, great summary. I really appreciate how you put things together towards the end of the show. And quite frankly, I had some listeners comment on that. They appreciate that. So thanks a lot for, again, putting things together concisely as a bit of a takeaway for our listeners.
Dirk, thank you. And that's something I've learned as being a TA in my PhD program, the power of a good conclusion, whether I'm writing my paper or marking one. It's always great to just recapture that and leave people with something to take away. And frankly, I do that for myself more so. But Dirk, Thank you for everything you just shared. I hope that everyone will keep tabs on this Elon Musk Twitter case and look beyond just Elon Musk and Twitter themselves to everyone surrounding it. There's certainly lessons to be learned here. But unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. And just as a brief announcement, I want to let our listeners know that we will be taking a bit of a summer break. So I expect us back at the end of September. We hope that you will enjoy the final weeks of your summer. And if you're in a place like Canada or the United States, that maybe the warm weather is something you can enjoy. But we will be back end of September. And just to announce a further announcement is that this has been the end of our first season here on the Jamoire International Podcast. We hope you have been enjoying, and we look forward to starting season 2 in the next month. And we have a few surprises for season 2. Expect the same old content, the stuff that you're used to and love now, but expect some new things and perhaps a high-profile interview or two. But that's it for now. We look forward to seeing you in a few weeks' time, and we hope that you will continue to apply what you learned here and share the podcast if you think it will be helpful to anyone, whether that's a coworker, a friend, or maybe even a family member. But that's it for now. Take care.